But perhaps one of the most important efforts undertaken by Colonel Olcott was the addition of an east wing to the headquarters building for the creation of the Adjar Library. Here he undertook the task to collect and preserve the traditional texts of India at a time when native cultural and religious efforts were being discouraged by Western influences. Olcott's aim, as he put it, was a revival of the original Hindu and Buddhist traditions in India and Ceylon. Over the years, the library has become renowned for its collection of Indian and Oriental works, as well as for its extensive collection of rare loose-leaf manuscripts. One display case contains a loose-leaf copy of the sacred Tibetan Kanjur and Tanjur, printed on paper made by hand from the bark of trees. This Tibetan manuscript was presented to the library by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and contains biographies of Tibetan religious leaders, including the great yogi Milarepa. The library's total collection became so large that in 1967 a bigger, more modern facility was built and includes climate controls for increased preservation capabilities.
When Colonel Olcott started the library, he made it a condition that it should always be within the compound of the Theosophical Society. And when the main hall became too small for the library, or when the library grew we found it necessary to have another building. Here we are particular about preserving the manuscripts and books so that they can be of help to the other people. So the readers are not allowed to come to the stacks and make use of the library. They have to select the books and give the number, and the staff here will collect the book and give it to them. That is one way we preserve it, so we don't have many losses in the library.
India's tropical climate contributes to the wear of all written materials. Here, workers and volunteers from around the world spend time reconditioning both old and new acquisitions before they are stored or made available to the public. In addition to being a repository of rare books and manuscripts, the library also employs Sanskrit scholars and produces a bulletin dedicated to its ongoing research efforts. In 1982, 100 years after Colonel Olcott's initial efforts, the Adjar Library had some 17,300 manuscripts and 160,000 books. Harvard Sanskritist Daniel Ingalls refers to the library as one of the chief repositories of Sanskrit manuscripts in the world.
After the Adjar Library relocated, the east wing of the headquarters building was turned into a museum for the display of items related to the Theosophical Society's long history. Portraits of many well-known theosophists hang on the museum walls, and one can find in the many display cases various memorabilia, even original lecture notes of some of the Society's leading figures. This address was given by Annie Besant at the 32nd Indian National Congress of 1917. Even the office chairs used by both Madame Blavatsky and Colonel Olcott are displayed here. Included in the collection is the famous painting The Messenger, done by the artist Nicholas Roerich and given by him to the Theosophical Society in honor of Madame Blavatsky's great contributions for theosophy. There are also excellent examples of rare religious art and statuary. On rare occasions, special exhibits from the archives are given of some of the more notable pieces not normally on display. Here, convention delegates at the 1991 convention are viewing items related to Madame Blavatsky in celebration of her passing 100 years earlier. This is the famous teacup and saucer, reported to have been produced psychically by her. Additional items that she was to have psychically precipitated were also included in the exhibit, such as these paintings of Yogi Tiruvala and Theosophist Stanton Moses. Also on display were many autographed texts and first printings of theosophical and related writings, either written or used by H.P.B. On the title page of her personal copy of The Voice of the Silent she wrote, "From H.P.B. to H.P. Blavatsky, with no kind regards," indicating a rather humorous but apparent displeasure with the limitations she saw in herself. This is the proof of the first cover of the Theosophist magazine. It was in the ongoing publication of this journal that Blavatsky spent so much of her time in those early years at Adyar, as both writer and editor. The editorial office for the magazine is currently situated in the southeast section of the main headquarters building. Mr. Naganathan is the magazine's assistant editor.
You know the objectives of the Theosophical Society. There are three objects. To build up a nucleus of universal brotherhood, to promote a comparative study of literature, philosophy, religion, and so on. And thirdly, to explore the latent laws in nature, in man, and so on. These are the three broad objects which we have been consistently projecting and maintaining all these years. These are the criteria for articles. We in the Theosophist are deeply, vitally concerned with the core of the ancient wisdom. Quite a number of subjects seem to be, to me, a bit peripheral. I would put them on the outer margin. Whereas we deal with Brahmavidya, the ancient wisdom in its core aspect. We have got a number of articles which project the Christian, in terms of Christian associations and Christian idiom. A number of articles have come projecting the same thing. I do not think that the difficulty arises as this is a purely Hindu or a purely Buddhist presentation. I don't think it doesn't. No true Christian or no true follower of Jainism will find any difficulty in assimilating what we are writing and what we are.
In addition to the Adyar Library, Colonel Olcott was also responsible for the placement of the 5 ancient gopurams or trilithons which adorned the estate. They were brought from the ruined temple site of old Chandragiri and are over 2,000 years old. Each one is sculpted with ancient Hindu symbols and deities. The trilithon nearest the main gate was presented to the campus by Colonel Olcott himself and bears the initials of the founders.
Ayubowan, Vanakkam. I'm Vayoni Dimel. This is Boston Lanka News, bringing you news, views and entertainment from Boston and USA. This is a special report. Colonel Henry Steele Olcott left the shores of the United States in 1878 looking for Buddhism and Oriental wisdom and ended up devoting the last 3 decades of his life to its revival. He arrived in Sri Lanka on May 17, 1880, and was instrumental in the Buddhist revival movement along with Venerable Hikkaduwe Sri Sumangala Thero, Venerable Mohotivatta Gunananda Thero, and Anagarika Dharmapala. Today we are here in New Jersey attending the event unveiling the statue of Colonel Henry Olcott, who had done so much for our motherland, Sri Lanka. There were many distinguished guests at the event, including U.S. Congressman Rush Holt and Sri Lankan Ambassador Jalia Wickramasuriya. The ceremony began by observing 2-minute silence in memory of those who died on September 11, 2001 in the United States of America.
I will, however, state that as we honor this great American Civil War hero who filled many important roles in the service of this nation, is also much revered as a national icon in my country of birth, Sri Lanka.
Tilak Ranaviraja, the donor of the Olcott statue.
The foreign relations is not government to government. It should be only people to people. We need to build communication, interaction between people to people. That is what Henry Olcott did. He established nearly 100 schools. Later it went up to 400 schools. Education in Sri Lanka revolutionized.
Mayor Brian Levine of the Franklin town, where the New Jersey Buddhist temple was located, welcomed all.
And I also look forward, as was said, for Colonel Olcott to become as well known and better in New Jersey, his hometown, his home state, and the United States as in Sri Lanka. That's only fitting. So may the spirit of Buddha and Colonel Olcott bring peace to all of you forever.
The Buddhist Theosophical Society of Ceylon that he established in Colombo in 1880 was instrumental in establishing a large number of Buddhist schools, the first of which was Ananda College. Among many of his achievements, Colonel Olcott designed the International Buddhist flag and the declaration of Vesak as an official holiday by the colonial British. New Jersey Congressman Rush Holt expressed his appreciation for creating a new awareness of Colonel Olcott in the United States.
I was a little embarrassed when I got the invitation and realized that I, who have spent some time studying that part of the world, the subcontinent, I did not know about Colonel Olcott. And I am so pleased to learn about him. And quite a striking statue. You will educate many, many others about his anti-colonialism, his spiritual quests, his, I guess you would say, worldly and yet otherworldly view. He really is an admirable character, and this will educate people like me who, I'm sorry to say, were not knowledgeable about him. So I thank you for doing this right here in this part of New Jersey.
Colonel Olcott also designed the Buddhist flag, as you know, which is still in use today. In doing so, he helped to make Sri Lanka better known to the rest of the world.
According to Dr. Vijay Kottachi, the president of the Ananda College Alumni Group in the United States and chairman of the organizing committee, this is a symbol of appreciation of a great American who was responsible for uplifting the culture and heritage of Sri Lanka from the yoke of British colonialism.
At the time Colonel Olcott came to Sri Lanka, Buddhism was under considerable pressure from the colonial regime and the religions introduced by different colonialists. And of course, it was recognized that Buddhism was in the decline.
Emily Fleckner attended the event representing the U.S. State Department.
Assistant Secretary Blake asked me to join you here on his behalf today. He is, as we speak, packing his bags for the long trip to Sri Lanka today. His flight takes off tonight. By my calculations, Assistant Secretary Blake will depart from Washington tonight and arrive in Sri Lanka 22 hours and 30 minutes later. In contrast, our man of honor, Henry STEEL OLCOTT, a respected native son of New Jersey, a gentleman, a lawyer, a U.S. military officer, a journalist, began his physical and spiritual journey on December 18th, 1878. By my calculations, Olcott arrived in Ceylon after a few detours along the way, 1 year, 4 months, and 29 days later. In fact, clearly much has changed in the intervening 131 years since Olcott landed on the shores of Sri Lanka. But much has changed, but of course several of Sri Lanka and America's shared hopes and aspirations remain the same. The desire for peace, for freedom of expression, for safety for our families, for economic stability and prosperity, and the desire for religious freedom, which is in many ways the kind of freedom that Olcott sought as he set sail for the East, and the kind of freedom that he ultimately worked so hard to foster in Sri Lanka. In his speech in Cairo, President Obama said that freedom of religion is central to the ability of peoples to live together, and that fact is a cornerstone of the State Department's commitment to the cause of religious freedom, and why we make this freedom a priority in our own diplomacy here. At this lovely ceremony, such as the unveiling of a statue today, and on the day preceding a grave and important marker in U.S. history, we hope collectively, all Americans and all Sri Lankans, that the future will bring both of our countries hope, freedom, and prosperity for generations to come. Thank you very much for your time.
The statue was created by a Sri Lankan sculptor under the direction of Mr. Tilak Ranaviraja. Before arriving to Sri Lanka, Colonel Olcott served in the U.S. Army during the Civil War and was later appointed by Secretary of State Stanton as Special Commissioner to uncover corruption in Navy yards and military depots in New York. When President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, Colonel Olcott was appointed to the investigating commission.
Olcott and Madame Blavatsky arrived at the southern port of Galle in Sri Lanka on the 17th of May, 1880. They were given a warm welcome, and they formally embraced Buddhism by reciting the 5 precepts. Dr. Guruge, one of scholars residing in the States, says, "It is remarkable how in the course of a few weeks, both Olcott and the Sri Lankan activists could identify how the vicissitudes of his insights and skill could be utilized in the island. The national leaders ensured that the powers be in the British colony, the administrators and the Christian missionaries took note of the foreign resource now supporting them, a white Buddhist raising his voice in favor of Buddhism and Buddhists and airing their grievances. Olcott was so encouraged and enthused by his new-found mission that he came to the island over and over again, as many as 20 times. His last visit was on 8 December 1906.
Colonel Olcott died on February 17, 1907 in India. Around his body was wrapped the flag of the United States and the Buddhist flag he had created for Buddhism around the world. That concludes our special report. We'll meet you again with another news edition of News, Views and Entertainment from Boston and USA. Till then, goodbye.
So immersed in Buddhist tradition, they can actually trace their land back to a time when the Lord Buddha himself walked on it. 230 years before Christ, that's 2,230 years ago, this culture was already full of the teachings of Buddha. Thousands of men and women are ordained as monks and nuns. Lay people, they honor the Buddha and they care for the monks. The rulers of the land follow the Buddha's teachings. They order that monasteries be built and children learn about the teachings of the Buddha. In this same place, imagine that before there was even actual writing, before people had figured out how to write and transfer information, monks had committed to memory the teachings of the Buddha in this land. And then when they were able to write in this country, they wrote it down and passed it on to other people. So that even to this day, many of the teachings of the Buddha came from this land, so immersed in Buddhist culture and tradition and teachings. Was there ever a place like this? There was. Any guesses of where it was? Sri Lanka. The country where your family and some of you are from has that amazing heritage. There is no other country that can say that. So imagine for all those years, these people being able to live in a community where they were learning about the Buddha. Then imagine that rulers who are more powerful come into this country and they take over Sri Lanka and they don't follow Buddhism and they send people from their own countries to live in this country, in Sri Lanka, and they send people who follow their religion to go teach the people of Sri Lanka, and they try to stomp out all those years of Buddhism in Sri Lanka. And all of a sudden, if you want a good job, you have to be part of their religion. You can't be Buddhist. If you want your kids to go to a good school, you have to baptize them, not be a Buddhist. If you want to have a decent life and be able to take care of your family, you must follow their beliefs, not yours. That's a hard place to be, isn't it? And many people didn't know what to do. So even though they still believed in Buddha and believed his teachings, to make sure that their children would be okay, they had them baptized and they sent them to the schools. You couldn't even get married to another person unless you were baptized. They had to do it. So over many years, what do you think happened? Did they remember Buddhism? Got lost. Monks who really believed that they should still be teaching the Dharma, many of them were killed. They were not treated well. And over many years, they lost a lot of what they had in their culture. It was taken from them. That's what happened in Sri Lanka. During this time, when people in Sri Lanka had forgotten how important the Buddhist teachings are, not all of them, but lots, a man from America who didn't know as much about Buddhism as the people in Sri Lanka once did, he came to Sri Lanka because he was interested in Buddhism. And when he got there, he was surprised to see and saddened to see how few people even knew about that heritage that they once had. And he helped the people of Sri Lanka remember the teachings of the Buddha. What was his name? What was this man's name? You should know by now. Henry Olcott. Henry Olcott. When he got there, he lectured the crowds and the people about how good the Buddhist teachings were and how blessed the people are when they follow the Buddhist teachings. He got people in Sri Lanka excited again about being Buddhist. Because during that time, it wasn't something that you necessarily could be proud of in front of other people. But he helped them to remember how important their culture was, and that it was important to follow the teachings of the Buddha, and that it was okay to say, we deserve to follow our own beliefs. Henry Olcott was also a colonel in the United States Navy and in the Army. And he had some influence over these other rulers from other countries who had come and taken over Sri Lanka. And he spoke on the Sinhalese people's behalf. And he convinced them to give them their freedom back. It wasn't just him, but he was a big part of that. He wrote a Buddhist catechism so that everyone could again start receiving the teachings of the Buddha. He explained what the Buddhist teachings were, and he made sure that every school, every home, eventually had a copy of this, so that families could start learning again about the Dhamma. When he came there was only a couple of schools where children could go as Buddhists and learn about their Buddhist faith. He started raising money to make sure that those schools for children could be opened again, so that you didn't have to say that you believed things you didn't believe to go to school. You could be a Buddhist and go to school and learn about Buddhism. And eventually, lay people were allowed to get married by Buddhists, and they could receive an education without having to get baptized. And then they could even celebrate Vesak as a national holiday, which they could not do before. After that, he got together with a couple of other people, and he created a Buddhist flag. The country is now excited again to have Buddhism in the forefront of their culture, and he wanted to make sure they had a flag that they could wave for that. And that is where our Buddhist flag came from. Just a couple weeks ago, our younger kids learned about this flag, and let's see if you can remember, because each color on that flag is a different symbol of Buddhism. Who remembers what this color symbolizes? What is it? Compassion. When you look at blue, you can think of how compassionate the Buddha is and how we as Buddhists are supposed to be compassionate towards others. What about yellow? What was it? I'm so proud of you guys for remembering these. The middle path, right? What's red? The blessings. When we follow the Buddhist teachings, our lives are going to have blessings. How about white? You can call it out. Purity. The teachings of the Buddha are pure. There's no blemishes in them. There's nothing messed up about them. What about this one? Wisdom. The teachings of the Buddha are wise. And at the bottom of the flag are all those colors again. That's right. Unity. It's a symbol of unity. And that was very important to Henry Olcott because he thought to make sure that Buddhists have these freedoms and that they can spread these teachings, Buddhists everywhere need to be unified. There weren't just Buddhists in Sri Lanka. They were in Burma, and they were in India, and they were in China, they were in parts of Japan. But all of them practiced a little bit differently. And some of them disagreed about some of the things the Buddha taught. And so they kind of got separated from each other. And Henry Olcott said, if we're going to be able to spread the important messages about Buddha and his teachings, then we need to focus on what we agree on. So he went to all these different countries and he spoke to the chief monks in these places. And they came up with 14 things that they could all agree on. And we have those even now. They are things like the Four Noble Truths and teachings about the 5 precepts. As a layperson, Henry Olcott helped an entire country remember the rich teachings of Buddhism. And once again, their lives and culture centered around Buddhism. And he is a very big part of the reason your parents are Buddhists today. Most of you filled out a card before we started, and I asked on it, what is one of your favorite things about coming to the Buddhist Center? And you had lots of different answers. Some of you said, I like learning about the Buddha, I like doing the arts, I like playing with my friends, I like learning about the Sinhalese language, I like having snacks here. If it weren't for the work that Henry Olcott did to make sure that Buddhism wasn't forgotten, there's a very good chance that we would not be here at this Buddhist Center today. You would not be learning Sinhalese, and I would never have known about the Buddha. We owe him a lot of thanks. You guys are lucky. You are young, and you are here, and you get to learn about the teachings of the Buddha and a good path to walk in life. Do you know how old I was when I found out about the Buddha? 27. Do you know how many mistakes and stupid things you do by the time you're 27 if you don't have a good path to follow? You guys got it early. You're lucky. Don't take it for granted. Be thankful. So when you see the flag, next time you can remember not only what the colors represent about the Buddha and his teachings, but that it was Henry Olcott who made it possible for us to even be here now in some ways. We may have not had these monks here to teach us. We owed him a lot of thanks, right? How did Henry Olcott get the government to agree? Well, he spoke to, I forget what he was called. He spoke to one of the officials who was stationed to oversee Sri Lanka and pleaded on their behalf and eventually convinced them. And I have to tell you, there is a lot about Henry Olcott that I don't know. I didn't know about him until about 6 weeks ago. So I'm learning with you guys. That's why I say you guys are very lucky a lot of times. What I am teaching to you, I've learned 2 weeks before you. And I just now get to start applying to my life. You guys get to do it from the time you're 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. Be thankful for that.